freshwater, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. Our podcast is driven by Ridge Rock Hunt Company. I'll talk about them at the end. I'm Sam, your host for this week, and sitting here in person once again with a gentleman that was with us about 10 episodes ago, Mr. Mike Behrens. Welcome back to the podcast, man.
Good to be back. So you made the journey this time.
Yeah, we're in your world this time, so
Yeah.
Appreciate you hosting us and letting us come over here to your place and sit down and chat for a little while. So looking forward to it. For our listeners, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, about 10 episodes ago, 138, 139, somewhere in there, Mike came out and joined me at my place for a discussion about his kind of introduction to hunting and bow hunting and all the adventures that he had last season. Not here to talk about that this evening, but it is in our podcast archives. You guys can go back and listen to that one. It's a great episode to check out. So, but today, we're here to talk about a topic that is a little bit more significant and honestly something that I'd be lying if I said I don't steer away from it sometimes, just not because I'm scared of it, but in today's world with the way that, in the online media world, throttling and censorship, dare I say, tends to impact a certain group of individuals. I tend to kind of withdraw myself from political discussions, and not to make this a strictly political topic or discussion, but there's some things that are circulating in the political world as it is relevant to hunting, the outdoors, conservation, all that kind of stuff. And so as we very gently step our toe into these waters, I guess you could say, we wanted to talk about that. Actually, not even the topic that we were thinking on talking about tonight, but it kind of came up, and we decided to give it a shot. So, but we will gently approach it and go from kind of the stance on hunting being conservation, and I'll kind of turn it over to Mike a little bit here and let you kind of talk to our listeners about where we're coming from this evening.
Yeah, this was a surprise to me because I don't try. I glance at the headlines and stuff every night at work, and I just kind of glaze over everything and see what kind of ridiculousness is going on. But I honestly haven't even seen anything on this, and I wake up and my wife she's like, "Hey, did you see this?" No. Sure didn't. Why? What is it? And she tells me, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I get the text, and I'm like, well, as it happens, we have some other things to talk about too. Yeah. So yeah, and I agree. I pretty much just look at the headlines, but I agree. It's such a tribal, divisive time at this point where, if you're not with me, you're against me. It's straight up Sith out there right now. So, but this crosses over into what we do, what you're making a career out of, and what I'm getting into pretty hard right now too. So, yeah. And there's a lot of people like us or somewhere in the middle, that aren't noobs, that aren't experienced, but are kind of, in the moderate area that may not be seeing this kind of thing or may not be interested in it. But in the end, it is of interest for everybody who picks up a rifle or a bow or a fishing rod or anything. Yeah, it's hugely important. So essentially, and I'm kind of just catching up on this as we go here, and it says the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is expected to publish regulations that would limit the equipment allowed on public refuge properties and expand the area where cost-effective lead ammo and fishing tackle is banned. Now, we don't know some of the stuff that we hunt, we can't use lead ammo on anyway.
Right.
And to be perfectly honest, it's probably just a good practice because you don't need to be injecting lead into the meat that you harvest.
Fair.
So I don't think that's really a big deal because any hunter that does it the right way is not using lead to begin with. So there's that. Now there are obviously situations or species that people do use lead on, but getting lead out of the hunting side altogether, I mean, fine if you want to target practice with it and everything, and zero rifles, great, whatever, that's fine. But as far as actually taking meat and harvesting, I don't think it's a necessary thing, and I don't really care about that one. But limiting equipment, we've heard them talk about limiting equipment already. They're really going after anything bigger than a 50, so 50 and above. So that means, my hog hunting rifle. I can't use that anymore, even though it's not actually a high-powered rifle. It's a pistol cartridge, but it's a 50. When you go out, especially if you're going out for coyote hunting or, the hog hunting in big groups and stuff with, that's where semi-automatic rifles come in extremely handy, especially with those larger magazine capacities. They're limiting that equipment. So essentially, I mean, it feels like they're trying to get us to go back to, the atlatl and a musket.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I'm, the extreme side of it is where I see this going. I mean, they're never going to get there because there's so many legal challenges. But yeah, there's nothing that I'm seeing that's really explaining exactly what he's wanting to do. But what they're trying to do is they're putting limits not on hunting itself, but they're putting limits on the amount of equipment or the type of equipment you can use, which is going to directly impact what people are already using and have already purchased and have invested in. And those are the types of things that are going to turn people away from hunting. And the little splash of conspiracy theory in there is, why do they want to do that? Well, because they don't want people being self-sustaining. They don't want people coming out and growing their own food in the gardens. They don't want people harvesting their own food. They don't want people outside of like large-scale farmers, and I'm not talking about people like my dad. They're trying to kill every small farmer out there right now. They're trying to push all that out. They don't want any of that. It's all about control. Anything that comes down, these executive orders, these laws, anything that comes out of Washington, D.C. is all about control. So the more control they can exert over you by virtue of limiting your ability to produce your own food, be self-sufficient, be self-sustaining, you're now more dependent and more reliant on the government.
Right. So these quote-unquote limits, which is basically a mask for a ban,
Right.
It really is what it comes down to.
It's a backdoor.
Yeah, it's a backdoor ban. What stage is all this stuff in? Because same as you, I really hadn't heard a whole lot. I sent you a text like, hey, we want to record a podcast about this topic. Or I didn't even say that, but I had a topic in mind, which we will still get to in a later episode. And then you came up with this and replied. And it wasn't until I started looking at it then, I was like, man, I hadn't seen anything on any of this stuff. Like,
Right.
It's very recent. So what stage is all of this kind of coming into? I know we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants and learn as we go right now. But
I don't know exactly what stage it's in. I don't know if they've actually published the executive order, if he signed it, or if they're just talking about it. But typically when something leaks out of DC, especially on an executive order type thing, because laws are different where there's a lot of opinions, a lot of discussion. It's a protracted type deal in the House and Senate, and that usually gets pretty public or not in the case of the Hearing Protection Act, where they just shelf it and don't care. But with something like this, if it's an executive order, it's going to burn white hot. So my guess, I'm not prepared for this at all. It's just, flying by the seat of the pants.
yeah,
But,
let's record tonight. Let's talk about this hot and heavy subject
let's talk about
that we're
something we know
clearly not
nothing
educated on. Yeah.
What I'm guessing right now is it's probably just in the infancy. So it's basically they're drafting it, is what my guess would be.
Yeah.
Once they sign it, then you have your actual legal challenges that can go forward on it and everything. But right now, I mean, if it's just scuttlebutt coming out of DC, everybody's pants is on fire right now, and there's a lot of freak out sessions.
Yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt that doesn't necessarily, lack some follow through, I guess I should say, at times. I would say that and like we mentioned, before we recorded, I should say, the biggest thing that folks can do is look this stuff up. First off, read articles and see how and if it will impact your local hunting areas, because we're talking to people right now across the entire country in various different states. Look at how this might impact your hunting areas, and then start reaching out to your state reps and the individuals who have the ability to have some influence in those conversations and stuff as things move forward. And then obviously your active conservation and fish and wildlife outdoorsman type groups. There's hundreds of them out there at both local and national state. Obviously, those are the people that will be very active in these conversations as well, and that we definitely encourage folks to reach out and support, I guess I should say. And that's where I always get hung up. And normally my efforts, and that's as far as I go, I guess you could say, in my conversations in the past like this, because at the end of the day, we can get on Facebook, we can be keyboard warriors and right. Rant and rave and get our account suspended or whatever the case might be. But at the end of the day, where we can help influence that is by supporting the people who truly can,
right?
And then preparing ourselves for situations as they come and go. So,
right, and yeah, you're correct on that, because it does us absolutely no good to get into, a pig fight in the mud with people online and then get turned in for saying something that they don't agree with, and then all of a sudden you're facing a 30-day suspension. And what does that do? Well, now you're 4 episodes behind. You're not getting your content out there. You're losing your social media growth.
You got more time to hunt.
you got more time to hunt. I mean, you could always use it and create more content, but yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. And this is really, at this point, you're talking about, as far as, what I'm seeing the headlines are, Biden's war on hunting. Well, that may be what is going to happen, but that's not what's happening right now. Those are headlines, and headlines are meant to spin people up. Mm-hmm. So really where it's at right now is they're pushing, I don't even see anywhere where this is an executive order. What I'm seeing is that they're just pushing government entities, which we always need more of. So it's basically saying that they're pushing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to update their hunting guidelines. That's really what it is. And
to reflect these limits.
Right, to reflect lead limits. So now, is that in and of itself? I mean, I just said I don't really care, because I'm not going to use lead on anything I eat anyway. So does it matter to me? No. But first they come for the lead. I didn't care because there was no lead. And then they came for, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't care because I don't use blah, blah, blah. And then they came for my stuff.
Right.
And now I've got nobody to help me, because everybody else their stuff's already gone.
Right.
So that's where this goes. And the only way to stop this kind of stuff from just festering and becoming a cancer in this industry now is to stop it right here. So this is where, all these lobbyist groups that are constantly blowing your phone up wanting money, this is where they can actually use that money instead of going on these retreat trips, whatever they do with all of our money other than go to court and challenge these things on a legitimate level.
Right.
So this is where that comes in, and they can actually challenge these on a legitimate level and get this nixed. But again, on this one, I'm not necessarily, I don't care, as far as a personal preference on it. I don't care because it's lead. I mean, I'm not going to suck on a lead pencil.
Right.
You know? So why would you put that in your meat? So I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, yeah, target practice and things like that, and that's where it doesn't differentiate in here. Is are they going to make it so you cannot shoot lead on you know, target ranges and things like that? I mean, what's the limit? It's very broad, and that's what leads me to believe that this is mostly just scuttlebutt. And if it says right now that they're expected to publish a new draft of hunting guidelines, they haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think in the piece that I was reading earlier, one of them was talking about, you know, some of the stuff that they're trying to draft and come out with right now being relevant, like in the 2024 to 2026 time frame,
right.
Which we won't get into that, but a lot could change or happen in
yeah.
between now and then. So,
and one of the other things too, and I saw this one. This one really doesn't deal directly with the hunting thing, but it does directly deal with public land. So, and to me, it seems like they kind of marry together.
yep.
So, what has been in the last couple of years, the big push from this administration has been climate change. I mean, even our military all of a sudden thinks that climate change is the number one existential threat to America. Let that sink in. Let's go to war with Mother Nature.
Mike's a veteran for our listeners that can't tell.
But with that big push, so you've got the climate change executive orders and all those things. Now, the only thing an executive order can really impact is federal property, federal entities.
Yeah.
So an executive order for climate change really only going to deal with public land that's owned by the federal government. What they're trying to do is they're trying to vacate any use of these federal lands. And what they're wanting to do is construct solar and wind on these federal lands because it's the only thing that they can actually do it on. Everything else privatized.
Right.
So that to me seems like it kind of goes hand in hand. We want to push people off. We want to push hunters off these public lands. And this is a way to do it so that way we can go back and we can execute these solar farms, these wind farms, all these things that I mean, you look at what a solar panel, I mean, it's a 2 foot by 4 foot panel for a residential one. Now, if I were to put a bed of panels in the backyard out here, I would lose with a quarter acre, a third of an acre.
Yeah.
And it would kill everything underneath it because it gets no sunlight at that point.
Right.
So now, and then beyond that, it causes erosion issues. So these aren't the types of panels that they're looking at putting up on these federal lands. They're putting up massive, massive panels. I mean, we're covering acres, dozens, if not hundreds of acres at a time.
I'm sure folks have seen photos, and you know,
Right.
there's been solar fields going in.
Yes, and that completely annihilates the entire ecosystem there. So when we're talking about climate change, who's really on a negative impact of the climates? I mean, when you're I mean, you just look at the houses and stuff. You put up 800 houses on a pasture that used to have grass and timber and everything else. What are those houses bringing to the table? They're not bringing anything to the table. They bring nothing to the ecosystem whatsoever except for pollution. So to me, they're barking up the wrong tree when they're trying to talk climate change and conservation to hunters. Hunters, by and large, I mean, there's always a couple of dum-dums in there that cause problems. Every group's got them.
Yeah.
But hunters at large are some of the most conservative-minded people in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Because we understand that there's a balance to everything. You can't go out and nuke every plant out there and then expect deer and turkeys and everything else that you want to harvest. You can't expect those things to stay there. You can't go out and, you know, completely annihilate a deer population, which is why we have management strategies, we have tag limits, we have all those things to make sure that we don't overkill the population.
Right.
When you put thousands upon thousands of acres of solar panels in these wooded areas or plains areas and things like that, when you put all this stuff out there, you're destroying the ecosystem and you're eliminating that population from that area. I mean, we've seen it before with the buffalo, we've seen it before with the wolves, and now they had to reintroduce the wolves, and that caused some positive growth at Yellowstone. But now every year that they gather more data, there's more question on whether that was the right move. So, I mean, yeah, it's off on a tangent a little bit, but these things do marry up with each other. This is just another way to get in on that back door, and it's a twofold type thing. I mean, number one, you're going after the land to execute the climate change thing. You're also going after the gun nuts like us, going after those crazy people with the scary black rifles because you just don't want them to have them. So this is another way to do it. You limit the ammo, you limit the capacity. So it's a twofold type deal, and they like to dip toes in the water so nobody notices, and that's what this is. Well, you don't want to eat lead anyway. Yeah, you're right, I don't. Well, what do you care then? I care because it's not your place.
And so that too, with it not being your place, that's where I feel like, as we've already mentioned, supporting those groups that can advocate for it, but then also when stuff like this is relevant to your state or your local area, you know, being involved as hunters and as outdoorsmen to, you know, have a voice in that capacity. And I'll use an example as like Colorado recently. They were wanting to, and we actually had our resident guy up there, Tim Burgess, on our podcast, and he talked about this several episodes ago, but they were wanting to reintroduce their wolf population into a big portion, a very popular hunting portion of that state. And the unit number slips my mind right now and specifically where, but the result was going to come down to it impacting over-the-counter tags, and you know, all these things in the long term that will fall back to limiting hunting opportunities for hunters who, as you said, are conservationists, are the people who actually care and, you know, put time and effort and thought into that kind of stuff. And we have people in cities who aren't hunters, who just hear, oh yeah, we got too much wildlife out there. We need to balance everything, so we're going to bring wolves back into the world. Yep. No.
And then they start losing their little toy dogs in the backyard because they're a nice quick snack for said wolf that they press so hard to bring in. And then, you know, in the case of the mountain lion out in Colorado, where the ex-NFL guy came out there and drilled this mountain lion with a bow.
Oh, I remember that.
You see that one?
I have seen that, yeah.
It was pretty cool.
It's like a Vikings player or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, this guy, I mean, he's a big dude, and this cat was as tall as he was when he was holding it up. I mean, it was a big kitty. But again, that's one of those things where, yeah, it's twofold. Yeah, sure, that animal species was here long before we were. You know, but at the same time, you know, live and let live. I mean, if he's going to stay up in the mountains and not bother, you know, anything down in the valley, great. But start coming down in the valley and causing problems, just like feral hogs. I mean, at a certain point, you got to put a stop to it.
Well, and you can look at other examples just over the years, like I believe in Idaho it was, where they reintroduced a wolf population, and a few years' time goes by, yeah, the wolves are going to do what wolves are going to do, and wipe out some deer and elk and stuff that's up there, and now all of a sudden you got a wolf problem. Now all of a sudden it's super easy for the time being. At the time, I'd be lying if I said I knew it was still that way, but you know, for a while there it was easy to go on a wolf hunt in Idaho. Yeah. Just because that they had let it go to the point where they had wolves everywhere. And then those wolves start doing what they do, as an example, up in the mountains. Well, now as the packs grow, and they're going to start migrating down, and like you say, people are going to start losing their pets out of their backyard because of it, and then it's a bigger problem.
That end, to a certain extent, what do you expect to happen
exactly
when you build a house in the backyard of a mountain lion range?
You're going to see
what do you really think is going to be the outcome?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, us out here, like, we're not in the mountains by any means, but there's enough woods and stuff around that we got cats walking around in the backs of our places and everything too, you know?
Night number 2, right outside this wall right here, night number 2, we had 2 bobcats going, just duking it out on the porch.
Yeah.
On the porch. Sweet.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing now.
This is where we are.
So another thing that I wanted to jump into a little bit is the Pittman Robertson Federal Aid in Wildlife Restoration Act. You ever heard of that?
Educate us.
Okay, so the Pittman Robertson Act, let's see, where's the overview here? Took over a pre-existing 11% excise tax on firearms and ammo. Instead of going to the U.S. Treasury as it had done in the past, the money generated by this tax is instead given to the Secretary of the Interior to distribute to the states. Now, this has been in place for years. It's 1937 is when they put this in place. So we've been operating on the Pittman Robertson Act for a long time.
Right.
And by and large, from everything that I've gathered about it, everybody's pretty on board with how it's operated, because back in 1937, we weren't really trying to pirate everybody's funding for the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
So it was a different time when this was written. So what they do, the secretary determines how much to give to each state based on formula that takes into account both the area of the state and the number of licensed hunters. Okay, kind of a big deal. So states like Texas with a ton of licensed hunters and a lot of area, it means a significant amount of money for our hunting industry.
Right.
Colorado, again, lots of licensed hunters. Idaho, Montana.
Yeah, these big states with a big hunting attraction, just period in general.
So it's a big deal for those states. None of the money from their hunting license sales may be used by anyone other than the state's own fish and game departments. So nobody can touch it. Now that statement right there is problematic for our federal government. They can't touch this money.
Right.
They don't like it. There was a push a few months back that they were trying to get Pittman Robertson changed or repealed, and I'm not sure if it was, several months back. I think I might have looked at it in 2022, so it might have been a 2021
I recall something about that.
But yeah, they have made an attempt on Pittman Robertson. Just like they, not to go off on another tangent, but, pilfering money out of Social Security and, things of that. Anytime they can get their hands on money, they're going to do it.
Yeah,
so,
we all know that.
And this is, I'm the same way. If, I get my hands on some money, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to use it for a new toy. And then once a plan has been approved, state must pay full costs, later reimbursed for up to 75% of that cost. So if they have a giant project they want to do as far as like state parks or any improvements, things like that, they submit that plan and they can get reimbursed up to 3/4 of it. So spend $1 million, get $750K back. So not bad program whatsoever. Yeah. It's a good law. It's been very helpful, especially when states have a large amount of public land, which Texas does not. States like your Colorados and your Wyomings and things like that with larger spans, larger parts that are public areas, they can do this, and they actually get a lot of funding from this program. Let's see. Okay, and then if for whatever reason any of the federal money does not get spent, after 2 years the money is reallocated to the Migratory Bird Conservation Act.
Okay.
So none of this money goes to the general fund in the federal government, and that's problematic for them because they cannot ever touch it. They want this money, and they don't care if it's money that hasn't been used, but they would like all of it. And that's why there was an attack on Pittman Robertson, a year ago, year and a half ago, whatever it was. They went after it, and if they attack it once, they're going to attack it again. So that's another thing that needs to be protected by the hunting community at large, but also everyone else, because it's not just for hunters. This stuff that is largely funded by hunters on the tax that's created here, this is all on hunting gear. Mm-hmm. So when you're buying those rifles, when you're going to Cabela's or Bass Pro or whatever big box store that you go to, any hunting goods, any hunting stuff, whether it's fishing tackle or camo or an actual rifle or weapon system, whatever it is, there's that money coming off of that sale that goes into this pot, and it gets distributed by the Secretary of the Interior. Now, how many people go to like a Yellowstone? Hundreds of thousands of people a year.
Right.
There's not hundreds of thousands of people hunting Yellowstone or the the public land surrounding it. So the people who are benefiting from the Pittman Robertson Act are not just hunters. The people benefiting are the people who want to go out and see bison and get charged by them because they want to take a selfie with it. The people who are benefiting are the ones that like to go hiking on the trails and get eaten by mountain lions. It's everybody who wants to enjoy public land for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're benefiting from this. So it's not just taken away from hunters, it's taken away from everybody who wants to go out and just have a woo-saw moment out in nature.
I think that's what a lot of people, not hunters specifically, but a lot of people who are novice to the hunting world or don't dabble in it at all, like you said, just outdoor enthusiasts who have never hunted. And if you don't ever want to hunt, then that's fine. But they don't look at it from that standpoint. They look at the great outdoors as just the great outdoors and just untouched land. And they don't realize that there's all these not backdoor but behind the scenes things occurring to help that maintain, to help that stay there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is driven by hunters. And back to the point is that hunters are the most, I don't want to say conservative because I don't want it to associate with political, but they're the conservationists. They are the most conservative outdoor folks around because, like you said earlier, they understand it.
Right.
They understand it. They know what it takes to, maintain a wildlife habitat, a wildlife population. To, it comes down to us in the backyard passing on a 3.5-year-old deer because he's not ready.
Exactly. And how much money is involved in that? I mean, just not money that we are using that's, like tax money or anything like this. It's like our personal money. How much money do we put into hunting?
There's absolutely.
A lot, thousands.
And that's where, the private land aspect of it, that, the federal or the state and local wildlife associations and all that kind of stuff or programs, all that kind of stuff, they can't really touch it hardly at all on the private land side, but that's fine because we do what we do.
Right. Now, when you take that, the money that we spend on our private land, we don't have the infrastructure and the capital to be able to do these massive projects. Like, I don't have $50,000 where I can have, big equipment, large equipment, landscaping come in and actually make these tanks and create these alleys and stuff that the deer are going to, and then create a habitat for turkey, which, that one has not shown back up.
Hey, I'm in this, as our listeners know, I'm in the same world on Texas Dirt. I get one turkey that shows up every turkey season. So
irritating. So, we don't have that capital, but with this excise tax through Pittman Robertson, those are the types of funding generators that, look at these numbers. Alabama, let's see, what year is this? So this is as of 2020, so I'm guessing these are 2019 numbers. In 2019, Alabama received $20.5 million in grant money.
Wow.
Alaska, $43.5 million. Let's see.
Man, Alaska's another one we hadn't even begun to talk about. Holy cow.
Texas, $46 million.
So Texas is getting more than Alaska.
Yes.
Or at least as of that year particular.
So that's some pretty big numbers. Now, if you, let's see. Yeah, it was basically $1 billion.
That came out of that.
State and territorial fish and wildlife agencies.
That's awesome.
So that's a lot. And then they have an excise tax on fishing gear, which is the Dingell-Johnson Act, established in 1950. That also contributes to this pot. So this isn't all just Pittman Robertson. There's other conservation acts that go into that. But when you throw $1 billion in the face of Congress, they start drooling.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they're like, well,
what else could we do?
We can launder a lot of that money back to ourselves if we do this the right way.
I didn't say it.
So they're not even trying to hide it at this point. That's why I don't mind saying it, because they're proud of it. Everybody's darling Dan Crenshaw has come right out and say, if you don't allow us to make back-end money, backdoor money, how do you expect to get the best and the brightest in Congress? Wow.
We won't go any farther down that rabbit trail.
Yeah, I mean, they're not trying to hide it at this point. So when they see $1 billion, they're going to try and figure out how to get a slice of that.
Right.
And that's what it boils down to. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle it's on. It doesn't matter. They're all going to do it. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
So you've got a few purists in there that'll last a couple, 3 years, and then they're part of the clique too. So it just is what it is. We've allowed that culture to take hold, and now we have to live with it and deal with it. And if we can correct it, great. But if not, we've got to manage it just like we do predator hunting. You know, not necessarily in that vein. We're not hunting.
No.
In that.
Just an example of.
But yeah, I mean, you have to manage the threats, and when politicians are coming after these funding programs, that's a threat on what we do, as whether it's part of our lifestyle or whatever it is. So you have to manage that. And part of managing that is putting that pressure on your state and local government officials, starting at the lowest level too, because I mean, there's nothing that comes down from the federal government that the local sheriffs really have to enforce. They don't have to. And we've seen it with the last 2 years. How many sheriffs have pushed back on restrictions and said, we're not enforcing this?
Yeah.
You know, right now with the laws coming out restricting firearm possession and things like that, you have sheriffs publicly coming out saying, I'm not enforcing this in my county.
Right.
Period. End of story. So that's the pressure that needs to be put on to manage these types of things and to protect this $1 billion that gets distributed to all 50 states that not just hunters get to benefit from, but the public at large.
Right.
You know, when you're talking, look at Fort Worth, you've got Eagle Mountain Lake.
Oh, that's
not privately funded.
Right. There are so many, like, it's not just large parks like Yellowstone or national forest or other large landmark or traditionally known places. It is small. It trickles down, like you said, to those local locations. You know, everybody, I'm sure everybody, whether you're a hunter or not, everybody has a local lake that they go to in the summer and hang out at, go on the boat, you know, that kind of stuff.
Everybody's swimming and hanging out all day long, cooking, barbecuing, doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that whole complex wasn't done for free.
That lake is not just there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's maintained, and it's part of that $46 million that came down from Pittman Robertson and Dingle Johnson and all those. That's part of that $46 million that got allocated to Texas.
Dingle Johnson, that just, man, that just sounds like a fishing term when I hear that. Sorry to you fishing enthusiasts out there.
But yeah, it covers, I mean, it's everything that you buy is part of these, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to take that excise tax and they're trying to funnel it into their pet projects, and that way it can get laundered back into their pockets, and that's just really what it boils down to. It's gross, it's nasty to hear about, and it just, quite honestly, just pisses you off if you really get into it. But it's a necessary battle that we're going to have to fight sooner or later, because they're going to keep coming for these taxes.
And that was kind of, you know, as we begin to bring it all home, that was one thing I wanted to hit on was, you know, not just reiterating, you know, the importance of reaching out to your local reps, paying attention to the headlines, as you said earlier, not reacting purely on headlines, dive into it a little bit before we get all up in arms, and educate yourself on it, as we have done even throughout this past 45 minutes or so sitting here talking to each other. But then also, you know, the best thing that we can do as hunters, aside from reaching out to those local reps, those you know, organizations that can advocate at those higher levels, is not painting a bad light on ourselves at the same time. We already mentioned, you know, that being a keyboard warrior, you know, or cussing somebody out on Facebook or whatever the case might be. Don't be that guy. But then also, just whenever you are in your own day-to-day interactions, whether it's in the outdoors in your local sporting goods store or everybody's got social media right now, and everybody and their brother and their dog is out there with a TikTok and Instagram page posting stuff about their hunting adventures. Don't be an idiot is what it comes
Make
down
yourself
to.
look like a professional, or like
Yeah.
you've at least been there before.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be that guy who's out there doing something stupid and painting all of us in a bad light, because all that's going to do is, even though there's hundreds of thousands of us out there being responsible, you get those one or two dum-dums like you mentioned, and now all of a sudden it feeds the fire for a shotgun blast to come out and hurt everybody.
And you see it all the time with veterans too. You've got, Mr. Meal Team 6 out there, January 6th, and he's standing out there looking like a total tool bag, and it's like all of us are sitting back here. It's like, well, why are you even there?
Right.
First of all, you've got a schmedium plate carrier, and you are not a schmedium dude. It's like, let's look the part. Let's look like we've been there before. I mean, just a little effort. And if you don't know, ask. That's the biggest thing too. If you're like, man, I'm just gonna put all this stuff together because I saw it online and it looks cool. It's like, well, I'm sure somebody who's who
a little more tactical than you.
I mean, even if they are a geardo, it's still, at least they know what it's supposed to look like. But yeah, that's besides the point. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Look like you've been here before, and look the part, act the part. And yeah, there's going to be a time where you're just going to get so wound up and you're going to want to go off. Well, go off in the shower. Do it there, because if you go off on a public video, it is out there in the ether for everybody to see. Yeah. And while some guys might look at it and be able to understand where you're coming from and chalk it up to, man, he's just heated up right now, it'll blow over, and maybe not even think anything of it. There's somebody on the complete other side that's going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's a hunter. All hunters are like and
this.
It only takes that one person to ring the alarm bell, and once they ring that bell, it cannot be unrung, and that video floats out there. It becomes the target of memes and everything else. You look at how many of these there's memes floating around still that I remember from my college years when Facebook was brand new and memes weren't even a thing.
Yeah.
But those pictures are still floating around, and we're not going to say how many years later.
Yeah, it just comes down to being responsible, as we said. But
so just with the research side of it, again, this going back to preparing yourself for whatever argument you're going to have with somebody. There is a website that I just tripped over. It's called wildlifeforall.us, and I have no idea anything about it, but it has all kinds of information on Pittman Robertson. It has where does the money come from, and it breaks it down on how much percentage of the tax is brought in from handguns, firearms, shells, accessories, archery. Where does the money go? And it breaks all that down. Wildlife restoration grants 79%, basic hunter education 20%.
that's good.
Enhanced hunter education 1%. So it breaks all this down, gives you a lot of information on it, so that you can actually see what it's doing, who benefits from it, and who's funding it.
Yeah.
And that's a key component, because this is a tax, and everyone in this country is entitled to know everything that there is to know about the taxes that they're having to pay.
Yeah.
We happen to have a war over that at one point in our history about taxes. So that's the reason that this is all public information, is because of that. It's a catchphrase at this point anymore, but taxation without representation. You can only represent yourself as well as you're educated. So if you know nothing about a tax or a proposed tax or something that might get repealed, if you know nothing about it, then you can't very well be represented. And you cannot be a representative of it, of whatever position you're on, until you educate yourself on said things. So yeah, there's a lot of research that needs to be done as far as the things that are going on at large. I'm not just talking about Pittman Robertson, but like at large, there's a lot of education that is not being done by our country, and that kind of needs to change because people are making a lot of knee-jerk reactions on a lot of things, and we're going to suffer the consequences of it in 10 to 15 years. And we're already starting to see some of those consequences from the last few years.
And you talk about knee-jerk reactions. We as hunters and outdoorsmen don't need to be in that group of people that are doing that. So that's in a large part why we're recording this episode, because we want to not complain about some things, but bring everybody's attention and focus to some things so that they can make their own educated opinions and find their own information. What's that website again? You quote that for us?
This one was wildlifeforall.us.
Wildlifeforall.us. Y'all go check it out if you haven't already. I'm gonna jump on there when I get home this evening.
And, I just did a Google search. The easiest thing, I mean, everybody loves Google, federal hunting equipment tax. And it'll start bringing up all kinds of stuff about Pittman Robertson, Dingell Johnson, all those different things. Some of them have nothing to do with it, but you can only go so far with the algorithms. But there's plenty of information out there. And it's not like you have to be a legal scholar on it or anything, but just know what you're talking about, And that's the whole point. This, one of the other points here too is like we're caught completely off guard. Well, how long does it actually take to look up and brush yourself up on this stuff? And it took about 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes, and we've been talking about it for 45.
So, and there, it's a good discussion to have, but I mean, in the end, we're only going to be as strong of a community, and I'm not talking about just hunters, but I'm talking about the entire conservation community, and those are the people that go on nature walks too. They don't realize it, but they're dependent, and they can help dictate the outcome of this.
Yeah.
But no matter what role that a person is in, as far as using nature, using public lands, using those types of amenities, it doesn't matter what your role is in it, whether you're just a nature walker or whether you're, hardcore hunter and fisher or whatever. You play a part in it, and you're an integral part in conservation of that area.
Yeah.
You're an integral part of maintaining this excise tax that we've had for almost 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 85 years, give or take?
Yeah.
So it's a long-standing thing, and everybody is on board, by and large, with what it does, and whether passively or actively, and all it's going to do is guarantee that we at least have some break from the concrete jungles of, like your Dallases, Fort Worths, LAs, all these giant cities that are ever expanding. Well, they stop at that line on these public lands.
Yeah.
And we start putting solar panels and all this other stuff after, the hunters get pushed off of them by not being able to use certain ammo or certain calibers and whatever else. And then they start closing it due to safety concerns because there's too many wolves there. So now you can't have hikers and walkers out there. And, pretty soon it's all gone. And now they're like, well, nobody's using these public lands anyway. Let's go ahead and put, 10,000 acres of solar panels out here.
Yeah.
And, whether that happens or not, who knows? I might be completely off base on it, but it's just a logical step. And you have to, it's like everything else. What do I do if? What do we do if? What do we do if? You run a few contingencies so you have a general idea of where things are going to go. And yeah, individually, none of us can really do a whole lot about it, but collectively, there's a very strong voice from, the hikers and walkers all the way up to the serious hunters.
Yeah.
It's a huge community.
Absolutely. Well, to bring this topic home, for our listeners or viewers, if you're watching the video, as we've already said multiple times, be active, be involved, pay attention, as far as what is going on in not just your local hunting communities, but what might be coming down the pipe that could impact your area or your state. Don't be afraid to reach out to those state reps or support those organizations that do have a seat at the table and that can influence the outcome. because at the end of the day, that is what they were originally established for, and that's what they're there for. So, and that's what we, as you already said earlier, we trust them to do that. But be involved, pay attention, and don't be reactive on headlines. Like we said, do your research, and don't be caught off guard. I'll say that too. Like, I felt like I was caught off guard just earlier today when you sent me that text message, and we, as we said at the beginning, flew by the seat of our pants, and what do you know, we made a podcast out of it. Yeah. but
they give us a lot of bulletin board material, it seems. Yeah,
for sure. So but anyway, that's my encouragement to all you that are paying attention and have made this far on our podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope it's been good for you. A little bit different than our normal programming, I guess you could say. But again, I'm always hesitant to step into these topics, but I knew we'd get into it and get into it well with sitting down here with you, Mike. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about this.
There's always going to be that intersection, and sometimes you just have to embrace the intersection and go with the collision, just let it take you where it goes. But it's not something that I know you're not going to do this anyway, but it's not something that you would ever have to do. This isn't that kind of show where you're going to have to dive into this every single week and be like, well, here's the update.
Yeah, exactly.
This is, purely information, and, it's ready-made public consumption. All you got to do is just look it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay educated, stay sharp, and, make sure you're calling the right people out on the crap that they're doing if they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't hurt, when you got a politician that's actually doing the right thing, let them know.
Yeah.
Because they get beat up constantly.
Absolutely.
They get the crap kicked out of them every single day by each other, by the public, by their constituents, by people on the other side of the country. So if they're doing something right, let them know. That way they know they're on the right track, and it's not all just negative.
Very good point. Well, for our listeners, thank y'all for tuning in. We're going to wrap this one up and go to the other topic real quick that we wanted to talk about. We'll do that in a separate episode, so stay tuned in weeks coming for that one. But thank y'all for listening, tuning in, watching, whatever you're doing. If you haven't already, hit that follow, subscribe button, whatever platform you're listening on. We're on all major podcast platforms, as well as Waypoint TV, Carbon TV, YouTube, and our website. The website's where you guys can go to find all of our different avenues of content and media series, as well as some of our apparel. Pick up a hat and shirt, support a small-time hunting brand. And Ridge Rock Hunt Company is the podcast partner. Derek and Lacey over there in Mississippi, they book hunts with vetted outfitters across the state. So if you're looking for that once-in-a-lifetime hunt somewhere, give Derek a call. He works with you on licensing, timeline, price, location, all that kind of stuff. So he'll get you fixed up. Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Go check him out. Thanks, man.
Yep, no problem.
We'll do another one here very shortly.
Yes, we will.
Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll catch you again next week, as always.